Former United States President Theodore Roosevelt, serving from 1901 to 1909, earned a reputation in his presidency of being a trustbuster and conservationist. However, did Roosevelt truly earn the nickname trustbuster and his reputation for the preservation of the United States' natural resources? While he established more national reserves and broke more trusts than his predecessors, Roosevelt did not really earn the nickname trustbuster because his economic policy was a sort of middle road between unbridled capitalism and limited business, which also applies to his conservation policies, which refused to fully side with either preservationists or big businesses. There are multiple, if not particularly strong, conservation acts before Roosevelt's presidency, including the Desert Land Act of 1877, the Forest Reserve Act of 1891, and the Carey Act of 1894. All of these acts promoted the irrigation of arid land, preserving it for healthy habitation. Roosevelt's conservation policies were greatly influenced by the time he spent building up his cowboy image in the disappearing western frontier. He became an avid hunter and outdoorsman and worried for the fading frontier, apparently going with it the popular American ideas of individualism and democracy. In 1902, Roosevelt urged Congress to put forward the New Lands Act. This act allowed the federal government to collect money from the sales of public land in order to fund irrigation in arid areas. Results of this act included the Roosevelt Dam in 1911, dedicated to the former president, and a dozen other dams in the West and Midwest. Roosevelt established the Forest Preservation Services in 1901 to prevent logging from tearing down all the forests in the United States. To preserve the ideas of the frontier, he established bird reservations, national game preserves to both control and preserve proper game hunting, as well as national parks and monuments. Roosevelt established 5 national parks during his terms as president: Cedar Lake, Sully's Hill, Mesa Verde, Wind Curve, and Platte. The parks spread across the West and Midwest. He preserved 125 million acres total, over twice that of his predecessors. John Muir was an avid preservationist with whom Roosevelt corresponded many times and spent 3 days with in Yosemite. He had an immense amount of respect for Muir, stating that his generation owes much to the naturalist, although Muir's motives for preservation of natural resources differed from Roosevelt's own. Heading Roosevelt's Federal Division of Forestry, however, was Gilbert Pinchot, who influenced Roosevelt's opinion of conservation. Rather than complete natural preservation, Pinchot believed in the efficient use of natural resources, that leaving them alone was as wasteful as overusing them. Roosevelt ultimately supported Pinchot's view. In the end, Roosevelt took a middle path in his opinions of conservationism. He, like Gifford Pinchot, wanted to use resources efficiently. He did not believe in full preservation of the frontier, but the use of resources to better land for human habitation. His preservation acts conserved the land for, in Pinchot's words, the making of prosperous homes. In his first term of presidency, Roosevelt brokered the Square Deal. The Square Deal combined his efforts of progressive conservation and the breaking of detrimental trusts. It utilized the 3 C's: consumers, conservation, and control of capital. His goal was to create a fairer deal between companies, consumers, and laborers. The first test of the Square Deal was in 1902. 140,000 miners in Pennsylvania went on labor strike, and the mine owners refused negotiation. Roosevelt called both parties to Washington and in the end threatened to seize the mines with federal troops, turning the tables on the corporate trusts, who were used to troops being seized over laborers. In other acts to equalize corporate power, Roosevelt pushed Congress to create the Department of Commerce. A branch of the department was given power to investigate interstate business, allowing future acts against monopolies a smoother trial. Roosevelt monitored and interviewed in railroad monopolies through this department. He passed the Elkin Act in 1803 to allow the government to tax railroads and shipping companies to prevent unfair shipping rates. Additionally, the Hepburn Act of 1906 expanded the Interstate Commerce Commission and limited shipping in 3 passes. In one such incident, the president intervened in an attempted monopoly of the northeastern railroads by the Northern Securities Company. The railroad company was run by J.P. Morgan and James Hill, who Roosevelt took to the Supreme Court. The court sided with Roosevelt, breaking the Northern Securities Railroad Trust. However, Roosevelt's reputation preceded him, as there were only a few select trusts he deemed detrimental. Mostly, he laid down the law on monopolies of major natural resources, showing his conservation policies, such as the Beef Trust broken in 1905. In fact, his successor Taft actually busted more trusts than he did during his presidency. In this comic, Roosevelt is portrayed as shooting down the trusts he declares bad economics to tame the so-called good ones. However, it's impossible to tell apart the good and bad trusts except by label, suggesting that Roosevelt picked out random businesses to portray an antitrust progressive policy. Roosevelt actually did not believe all trusts were evil. Major government interference was his goal, merely to extend the arm of the executive branch to show the influential monopolies that the government was still in control of business. Another of Morgan's trusts even gained personal blessing from Roosevelt when Morgan monopolized the coal and iron industry. Ultimately, Roosevelt did not earn the nickname Trustbuster because his economic policy supported the growth of major businesses, and he allowed many businesses to thrive under the government's watchful eye. Similarly, his actions never showed major decision in conservationism, as he fought off both full preservationists and the greedy businesses that he busted. Sources include the American Pageant United States History textbook, the National Park Service website, link below, as well as Google Images for the numerous images provided throughout the presentation. Thank you.